বিস্তর গন্ডগোল। পান্তভূতের জ্যান্ত ছানা করছে খেলা জ্যোৎস্নাতে, করছে তারা মায়ের কোলে হাত পা নেড়ে উল্লাসে। ফেলুমিত্তির গ্যাংটকে বসে ঘাস
Parambrata, I am absolutely delighted to have you on Filme Shilmy. Thank you so much for joining me, and a huge congratulations on Shabash Feluda on ZEE5 Global.
Thank you very much, Anu. It's lovely meeting you too. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. Well, look, I think when it comes to the story and this world that the show creates, but what do you think in terms of nuances and this type of storytelling really distinguishes from your previous experience to this one?
Right. So from the point in time when we started even considering that we are going to make Feluda again and contemporize it, we kept in mind that Feluda is a property which has got a lot of traction from the people who have grown up like me, who have grown up with Satyajit Ray stories and the Feluda stories. So we decided not to tamper with the original essence of the Feluda stories, but at the same time, we were contextualizing it, we were contemporizing it when we were positing it in 2017. So whatever changes the last 25 years or 30 years technology has brought about in the world, if we decide to factor those in, if we decide to have those displayed in the series, like for instance a smartphone, like for instance laptops, computers, internet, smartwatches, and all of that, we will also have to factor the consequences of those devices, the changes they have brought about in our habits or in the way we go about doing things in the modern world. Otherwise, the crimes which Feluda is to solve, they don't really stand on their feet anymore, do they? Because a big part of any crime thriller is also about identities, about whether one person is being truthful or not, whether one person is speaking the truth. And truth these days is it's very easy to find out if someone is lying. You just go on Facebook and look for that person. You just go on Google that person, and you know if that person is lying or if that person is being truthful. So we had to make the crimes or the crime foolproof, keeping today's technological advances in mind. The progress that has been made in terms of technology in the last 3 decades, we had to factor those in. So so we wanted to create a nice blend of a very, very modern, contemporarized Feluda and Topshe and the very well-known characters, while retaining some very salient traits of the original writing, the last of which happened, I think, right before Mr. Ray passed away, which was when he wrote Feluda last. He passed away in '92. So I think the phase in which Feluda was mostly written, was a period of about 20 years, starting from the early 70s to the early 90s.
Right. And I think it's really fascinating. I am a huge Satyajit Ray fan. It's only in the last year or so where I've really been completely surrendering myself to his works. And I think he is such a magician. In the way he's presented.
That is, yes.
That even now, if we look back, it's so relevant today. But I think obviously Satyajit Ray ke saath saath aap ek bahut bade filmy lineage se aate ho. You come from a very huge filmy lineage. How have both these components actually really formed your perspective and perhaps determined your choices in cinema as well?
This is a very, very interesting question. Thanks for asking me this, because mostly we end up answering questions like narrate some funny incidents from the shoot and stuff like that. But I'm happy to hear such an intense question. Yes. So interestingly, I come from a lineage that is which is from, I mean, which is sort of, which is the Ghatak family. And the Ghatak families have had their eccentric geniuses, they've had literateurs, authors, social activists, and of course, filmmakers and screenplay writers. And by filmmaker, I mean the one and only Ritwik Ghatak, who is often looked at as the antithesis of Ray, actually. Like, in Bengal, it's like a comparison that, whether, do you like Messi or Ronaldo? It's like that almost. So is it Ray or Ghatak? But the fact remains that I think what I have learned, while I have belonged to this legacy, I have grown up with Satyajit Ray films, and I have learned to discover Ghatak at a more mature, later age. And incidentally, I also got the opportunity to work with Mr. Ray's son, Sandip Ray, like towards the very beginning of my career. So I think I have had the good fortune. I've been fortunate enough to kind of have a taste of both the worlds and best of both the worlds. And so I think the way it has shaped up my perspective on cinema in general is that I like to think now that if Ray is a very sort of Apollonian, very organized, very structured, very aesthetically fine, very nuanced, subtle version of aesthetics on one hand with Ray, and on the other hand, we have this raw talent, genius, sometimes eccentric, sometimes self-destructive genius in Ghatak, whose films probably lacked the finesse that Ray had, but probably made up for it by having more glaring issues, contemporary social issues, very eccentric, raw energy, and very direct, very appealing expressionist art form. That's what his cinema embodied. So I think as I have grown up, I have learned to understand that what you need to call yourself an artist, I think, is a very fine mix of both these traits, both these schools. So I think that's how, on one hand, belonging to this legacy, and on the other hand, growing up with Ray, and then later on also having gotten the opportunity to work with that family, I think it has brought about this nice sense of balance in me.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful to hear. I see that balance as well, actually, when I see your works. In fact, I've seen, to be very honest, I think I've seen very few Bengali films of yours, I must be honest, but I've seen a lot of Hindi ones.
Right.
I think I can definitely say that, I mean, I've seen certain scenes of yours from the Bengali films you've done. And one thing that I see about you is that you have this very, again, a very rough but yet very soft appeal. There's this very two distinctions that you have. I think when I see your presence on screen, there's like this sense of cuteness that you have, but yet also the sense of dominance on screen as well. So again, we were talking about these two components, right, that have really influenced your works. Do you think the characters as well that you choose and the way you portray it has to also do with that as well?
I think so. That, it also gives rise to, or leads to, a certain sense of duality in me, which I see permeating into my work, percolating into my work, because there are choices that I have made purely from a very, very methodical and calculative point of view, that, this is something that has a lot of legs. It's going to go far. I should be part of this. And the other hand, I've also made choices which at least very few people from my generation and from sort of the kind of roles that I have been playing before and I've suddenly gone ahead and made a choice of playing a transgender person in 2017, and with an absolute newcomer producer and director. So I don't think a lot of people would do that because it might just get into their sort of hero image or whatever. But yeah, so I think this is a certain sense of duality that works in me. On one hand, I completely understand and appreciate. In fact, I cultivate the idea of making things or making choices which will attract an audience. On the other hand, there is always a percentage in me, always that one person in me, or at least part of me, would always side with making eclectic and eccentric choices.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think when it comes to playing a detective, again, I mean, I think when you're playing a character, again, I'm going to reference your Hindi films because that's what I've seen. So again, when you're like, whether it is a Kahaani or even Pari, when you played that role who is trying to discover the truth, there is a sense of uh, vulnerability as well that you portray as well. I mean, I always bring this whole topic of vulnerability up in my interviews because I'm very fascinated to see how actors use that as a way to project their emotions, even if it
Right.
isn't to do with vulnerability. So again, when it comes to portraying a cop role or even a detective, what are some of the nuances of life that really help you to put in order to portray it in a very authentic and relatable manner as well for the audiences?
I'm going to answer this in a slightly different way. I'll tell you what. In the subcontinent, we are very much in awe of this this certain definition of machismo, which is praised, right? Which sort of is very looked up to, is very revered, and all the major heroes that we've had in Bollywood or even in Bengal, especially when I was growing up, I mean, they all had to be very macho, and vulnerability was not really one of those check boxes that you would take. But I was a very shy boy, and I was a very shy boy. I was a big introvert, and so I had to kind of. But then slowly, as I was growing up, and eventually, by stroke of luck, I landed up in films, and where shyness is not exactly a very a quality which is highly in demand in our line of work. So I kind of had to get over that and become and create a self of mine which was not unsocial, which was not sociopathic. It was a self of mine which was outgoing and proactive, and that's the self that the world sees of mine. And but I always knew that no matter how much I try, there are certain things which will never really come to me. There are certain things which I, or let me put it this way, there are a few things which will always be an integral part of my character, of my personality, a certain sense of softness, a certain sense of articulation, a certain sense of probably wanting to understand a little better before jumping to conclusions, of being non-judgmental. And these are qualities which in our kind of cinema, the kind of male characters we usually sort of जिसकी हम पूजा करते हैं ना, those male characters, the qualities that I'm talking about are somewhat in conflict with such characters a lot of the times, actually. So I always knew that there's no point in me trying to become this macho man that I will never be. Instead, let me be this sensitive Bengali guy who is just who is curious, who is introspective. So these are the nuances, and who is a human being, most importantly, and like all other human beings, somebody who is who can be vulnerable at times, who can be fragile at times, and that kind of a human being. Of course, I mean, when you're playing a title like Feluda, that person will be very smart and very articulate, very sharp, and all of that embodied. But then there has to be, I mean, I should not try to supersede myself and surpass myself and get rid of my innate qualities which I possess as a person. So that is how I look at it.
Absolutely. So it's a balance, isn't it, of trying to separate obviously your beliefs and your perspectives as Parambrata, and then also trying to also dive into the characters. That's what you're saying, right?
Right.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I must say about Bengali cinema, because it's obviously had its phases. Like, I'm sure it began with the silent era, then it obviously had that whole parallel cinema movement, and now it's obviously a sort of revival of sorts. But I think one thing that I love about some Bengali films, your Gine Chune films jo maine dekhe, I think that there's a way that the cinema produces films which are realistic, hard-hitting, but yet very seductive in essence.
Yeah.
Whenever I watch a piece of Bengali cinema, it's so romantic in its portrayal. I mean, even if you look at Satyajit Ray's movies, I mean,
come on. I mean, we have to give it. We are just softies. You know what I mean? We're just soft. We're just soft people. It's just
Khub mishti.
Khub mishti. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just sweet people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say actually, Parambrata, as in, what do you think has really kind of attributed towards perhaps the representation of reality within Bengali cinema? And I think the fact that obviously now Indian cinema is recognized as one entity. There's more curiosity now. People are wanting to watch films that are not just about the commercial masala Hindi films. They are interested in trying to dive in. What do you also think about that? So there's two questions in one, really.
So I think I'll just quickly summarize. What you're asking is very important. I think is, although Anuj, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So I think yes, Bengali cinema has had a golden run. It has always been known for its quality over quantity and over money. The money it makes has never really been the center of focus for as far as Bengali cinema is concerned. But I think that now that, as you mentioned, that Indian cinema is including flavors, more localized flavors, and right now it's predominantly from the south, the southern part of the country. But I think if we have to kind of sort of get ourselves included in the bigger body of Indian cinema, like the South, and become pan-Indian, we also need to sort of up our game a little bit and sort of take our aesthetics, fine-tune it a little more, and take it to that scale and structure where it also gets noticed like another South Indian film in the national arena. I think there is a bit of gap there. Aesthetics, yes. Great subject matter, yes. All of that, but I think we need to make our cinema a little more commercially viable right now.
And how do you think that can be done? What do you think needs to be done?
That's a very long conversation. Even I honestly, I don't have that answer. Nobody does. It's a question of trial and error, really. And I'm sure we're gonna get there through some attempts.
Right. Well, look, Parambrata, unfortunately, we've run out of time, but it's been such a pleasure to have this chat with you. I remember meeting you last year, actually, at a film festival here in London.
Yes, I remember that. Yes.
Yeah, it was so lovely to see you, because I think your film had screened at that time, and I was so
absolutely
happy to meet you. I was like, because I loved you in Kahaani, and I think ever since I saw you, I was like, I really need to have a chat with this gentleman, and I'm really glad that thanks to Shabash Feluda on ZEE5 Global, we were able to have this opportunity. But I hope you make a trip to London very soon, and wishing you.
That's my second home, so I keep going there every year at least 2 times. So yeah,
fabulous. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, I'll definitely check with you whenever you're in town. It'll be lovely to meet you.
Surely. All right. Thank you, Anuj.
All right. Bye, Parambrata. See you later.
Bye.